This young man sitting on the bench who nervously ran his hands through his hair is called Lin Hao. He is an orphan. He is neither a father nor a mother. He looks like a high school student, but his real age is a secret. Since he has such an appearance, he decided to broadcast and communicate with viewers. Someone wrote to him in a chat that she felt sorry for this mouse. He had 3 younger brothers, disabled parents, and everyone needed to be fed. He was still in school and looking for ways to earn money. Another viewer in the chat wrote that school children should study. "Where is the administration of this platform looking?" she asked. A viewer fascinated by him asked in the chat if he was a member of a trade union. She could help him join the organization. Now, Lin Hao is streaming every day. He pretends to be a schoolboy so that naive girls will donate to him. He doesn't want to reveal who he really is to anyone in order to maintain discretion. There was no way he could have believed what was about to happen, but this was enough to destroy his ideas about the world. A bright flash of lightning flashed above him. The sky was covered with black clouds, and the rumble of thunder was heard somewhere in the distance. All passers-by stopped to look at the sky, and Lin Hao was no exception. Suddenly, in the place where the lightning had accumulated, a flash appeared from which a ray of light was directed straight to the ground. From this bright, shining ray, an unknown eyeball with tentacles appeared. It turned its gaze to the people and said that it was the great god Agatha Nicholas. Seeing this, people became very nervous. Someone even shouted that it was the end of the world. They all froze in place, and one of them asked, "Is this some kind of game? A 4D projection?" No one believed this was really happening. Lin Hao looked at the huge eyeball in shock and thought it seemed as if the voice had appeared in his mind. Agatha Nicholas glared at them with an unblinking gaze and said that they should honor him and rejoice. They were now called his noble warriors. Let them fight for him. Immediately after his words, a huge barrier appeared around the crowd. People began to run back in panic, and Lin Hao stood still, not knowing what to do. The dome that enveloped them had separated from the main city and was now floating somewhere among the stars. Agatha Nicholas said that even if they tried, they would not be able to escape. They were surrounded by an insulating dome that would keep them inside. He would be kind to them and give them 10 minutes to realize their fate. After 10 minutes, he would return and announce the first missions. He hoped they would be well prepared. After these words, he disappeared, and the people were left alone. Lin Hao pursed his lips and thought, was he in some kind of romance? Realizing their fate, people began to call their relatives and superiors. Lin Hao looked at everyone around him. The rest of the people also took out their phones, but there was no signal. Someone exclaimed, "What's going on? I can't understand anything." Lin Hao became nervous and thought, why is this happening? I'm still young and want to live on. Why should I be involved in this? One guy in the crowd could not accept this fate. He grabbed the bench in rage and exclaimed, "What the hell is going on?" He threw the bench straight at the barrier and shouted that they should be let out. A few seconds later, the bench hit the barrier with a thud and was immediately pushed back. It flew towards the guy with immense force. A powerful blow was heard and heavy dust rose. All the people retreated, covering their faces from the debris. As soon as things calmed down a bit, they saw that the floor had been broken by the incredible force with which the bench had flown. They came closer and someone said, "This can't be happening." They saw that the same guy who had thrown the bench was lying underneath it. Someone exclaimed in shock, "Is he dead?" People became even more worried. A man said something scary was happening. Realizing that the problem was the barrier, he told the others to move away and stay far from the edge. Drops of cold sweat rolled down Lin Hao's temple. He thought, so that man really died. He took out his phone and saw there was no connection either. What should we do if we can't get out? Suddenly, something completely unexpected appeared on his screen and he was slightly surprised. An inscription appeared on his phone saying that this was a gift from the distant future. He hopes this time you'll be able to go further. As soon as the message disappeared, a roulette wheel with colored parts appeared in front of him, representing different rarities. At the talent draw, he had a 60% chance of getting a normal talent, a 30% chance for excellent, 6% for rare, 3% for epic, and 1% for mythical. When he saw the roulette, he was even more surprised. He asked, "Is this a talent draw? What kind of game is this?" He looked around to see what other people were doing and thought, judging by their reactions, that he was the only one who had this thing. He looked back at the phone screen and thought, do I really have some kind of cheat? He pressed the wheel spin button 5 times. Immediately after that, his face lit up with multicolored light and he began to wait for what would happen next. After a few seconds, he felt something as if he were being sucked somewhere. He closed his eyes, fighting the sensation, and then it seemed that he found himself in another space. He shot his eyes open as he walked out of there and looked at the phone screen again, thinking, I can feel it. I really have some kind of cheat. He looked at the rest of the people around him, who were very panicked and nervous, not knowing what awaited them next. Lin Hao had a confident grin on his face and thought that, after learning he had some kind of cheat, all his panic disappeared. He felt filled with confidence. He looked at the phone screen, where there were 5 talents to choose from. The first regular talent was Trash Can, then there was the regular ability to urinate 10 meters forward. Spirit Gi was an excellent talent, then there was the Kept talent, Epic Rank, and finally the mythical Game of Life talent. After briefly reading the names of the talents, he thought he needed to see what kind of abilities the system had given him. He clicked on the first talent to read the description. Trash Can. No matter how crappy the food is, he can always stomach it. Even if he eats something inedible, the feeling afterward will be as if he had eaten the highest delicacy. Lin Hao decided not to comment on this talent and continued reading the next one. Ability to urinate 10 meters. He can shoot a stream 10 meters forward even against the wind. He can impress anyone who sits next to him. Lin Hao frowned and thought, what kind of talent is this? He felt like he had overlooked the most useless talents, but then he noticed a blue talent. It seemed to be of excellent quality. It shouldn't be that bad, he thought. The next talent was Spirit Guy. It was a passive ability. He's a great guy, gifted and just very energetic. Lin Hao smiled wryly and thought, why do I feel like I've been deceived? Excellent rank. Seriously, why did they slip me some nonsense? He decided to skip the epic ability for now and go straight to the mythical one. Mythic Rank. Game of Life. A simple but reliable practice. His skill, courage, and bravery reach the maximum level. Nothing will frighten him. Minor enemies, maybe demons. They are all NPCs and their weak points are immediately visible to him. Lin Hao was not satisfied after reading it and wondered, is this really a mythical rank? It doesn't seem to provide much benefit. Thoughtfully raising his hand to his face, he considered that as he gained these skills, his heart overflowed with confidence. Before, he believed certain traits gave him confidence, but now he thought maybe the secret lay in the mythical talent beginning to take effect. If so, then the very ability to remain fearless in unpredictable situations without losing control was quite useful. But is courage the only bonus from this skill? Maybe I overestimated the power of this shield, he thought. He touched the phone screen again and decided to take a look at the epic skill. Epic Rank. Kept. Women stronger than him have 50% more initial favor towards him. Some men with special hobbies are also within the activity range, so he should be careful. As for women who are weaker than him, he must take care of himself. He is a kept man, not some kind of friend of the girls. Lin Hao read the description of this skill and thought, kept? Seriously, even though he knew many men dream of being supported by rich women, he still felt it was somehow wrong. Would I even want such a life? Suddenly, at that very moment, his phone disappeared from his hands, dissolving into pixels in the air. Lin Hao became very worried. A second later, he was struck by severe pain. He clenched his teeth, trying to somehow fight it off, but nothing helped. He grabbed his head with both hands and pressed on his temples, saying that he was in so much pain. With such a strong headache, he decided to move away from the large crowd, leaning one hand against the wall. He stopped and thought, is it because I closed the system menu? He glanced at the people who were standing calmly and thought this must be the first time the system module was connecting to his brain, so there was no need to worry. But his head still hurt, and his vision was cloudy. Suddenly, all the pain disappeared in an instant, and something he had never seen before appeared in front of him. He was very surprised to see a system window next to every person. He turned his gaze to a boy with glasses. The system reported, ordinary person, attitude, neutral, status, healthy, level, strength, 2, constitution 3, agility 2, will 3. Advice: this guy is as weak as you. To kill him, just stick your fingers in his eyes or crush his bones. Then Lin Hao turned his gaze to a woman. The system reported, ordinary woman, attitude, neutral, status, healthy, level, strength 1, constitution 2, agility 3, will 2. Tip, she's weaker than you. You can just hit her. After that, Lin Hao looked down and seeing his own system window was very surprised. I've never seen such game interfaces before. How cool is that? The system showed all his acquired talents and report. Ordinary healthy man, level, strength 3, constitution 3, agility 2, talent count 5. Why do I have so many talents? Am I a cheater? Looking at the system window, Lin Hao thought, this is the character panel, right? This is the true function of the game of life skill. He waved his hand, causing the system window to disappear, and thought that he could remove the character panel with just his hand gesture. The mind is, of course, convenient, but keeping it in sight all the time is like an eyesore. It bothers him a lot. He waved his hand again, opening the panel, and thought that he should try using this panel on someone else. His eyes immediately caught a girl who walked into the alley where he was resting. She looked quite confused, as if she were looking for someone. Lin Hao looked down and saw a character panel in front of her where it was written that she was an ordinary woman with a neutral attitude, healthy, level 0, power 5, constitution 4, agility 5, will 4. This girl looks soft and weak, he thought, but I need to be careful. She comes from a martial arts family. 3 of the 4 attributes are stronger than mine. She's clearly stronger than me, so the keeper skill begins to take effect. At one point, the girl noticed him and looked at him with a confused expression. Lin Hao also looked in her direction, and their eyes met. The girl's mood immediately rose and she smiled at him. The system immediately reported that her attitude had changed to friendly. Lin Hao looked at the updated character panel, which now showed that she was friendly towards him, and thought, it's not my imagination. This means I can consider not only the game of life a good skill but also the kept man. As soon as the girl noticed him, she walked towards him with a confident gait and a slight smile on her face. She approached him, straightened her hair, and called him brother, asking why he was there alone. Had he lost his parents? Hearing her call him that, Lin Hao made a face. He thought he understood that he had a gentle face, but not so much that he'd be mistaken for a lost child. While they stood next to each other, the girl began to look around cautiously, scanning for danger. Lin Hao noticed this and thought, she's being cautious. Her behavior only proves that she's still anxious. Even so, she decided to prioritize me and take care of me somehow. The keeper skill is truly amazing. The girl noticed he hadn't responded and nervously said that she wasn't a bad person, so he shouldn't misunderstand her. Lin Hao made an innocent expression and replied that everything was fine. It was just hard for him to answer her question. After all, he had neither a father nor a mother. He was an orphan. In his mind, Lin Hao smiled proudly, thinking, a girl who fights well and is kind-hearted towards me. Since my skills boost my characteristics, I should stick to a strong person. Upon hearing about his parents, the girl involuntarily gasped, then smiled awkwardly and apologized, saying she didn't know. Lin Hao smiled awkwardly back and replied that everything was fine. He was already used to it. He then looked up at her innocently and, calling her little sister, asked if they could get out of this insulating dome. She apologized again and said she didn't know how. Maybe the guy who claimed to be an ancient god could help them. Suddenly, her gaze changed dramatically. She patted Lin Hao on the head and told him not to worry. For a moment, Lin Hao was slightly taken aback by her action, but she didn't notice. With a smile and shining eyes, she said his little sister would still protect him. He thanked her with a smile, and after that, they held hands as she led him somewhere. She asked what his name was and whether he was in high school. He replied that his name was Lin Hao, but she could call him Little Mouse. He was in his first year of high school. He thought to himself that he hadn't lied. He tells everyone he's a freshman. The girl smiled and called him Little Mouse, then enthusiastically raised her hand to her chest and declared that she would become his family. Coincidentally, her last name was also Lin, and her name was Zan. He could call her sister Yun or just Zan. Lin Hao agreed to call her little sister Yun. At that very moment, someone called her Miss Lin. A man approached them from the side and asked where she had gone. He said they didn't know anything about the current situation, and danger could be lurking anywhere. How could she run off so carelessly? Lin San put her fists on her waist with a smile and told Brother Wei not to worry. With her skills, she would never get into trouble. Brother Wei looked at Lin Hao incredulously and asked who he was. Lin Zan came closer to him and whispered, "This child is an orphan. He's still in middle school. It will be difficult for him to survive in such a dangerous environment. We must take care of him." Brother Wei looked down at her and said, We're already in a situation where it's hard to protect ourselves. Why should we help him? She replied, despite his young age, I think he could be a good assistant to you. She waved her hand at Lin Hao, beckoning him over, and asked, Isn't he cute? Lin Hao immediately ran up to her and she put her hand on his head. She then asked him to call her little sister with a smile while looking at Wei. Lin Hao, like a puppy, happily called her little sister Yun, and she sat down smiling at his face. Brother Wei, seeing their relationship, only snorted and reluctantly agreed. Lin Hao looked at him and thought, Lin Zan also has her own bodyguard, so not only is she capable of fighting well, but she is also much richer. I actually caught a goldfish. He looked closely at the bodyguard and thought, but what about him? A system window appeared in front of him. It informed him that the man was an ordinary man with a neutral relationship, status healthy, level 0, power 6, constitution 5, agility 5, will 3. This guy is a master of sports in Muay Thai. He's very good in close combat, so it's best to stay away from him if the situation becomes critical. The first thing he will do is leave him. After looking at his characteristics, Lin Hao thought that he truly deserved to be called a bodyguard. He really had good stats, but the advice from the system seemed like some kind of warning. Suddenly, a loud sound was heard, causing everyone present to sharply raise their heads. In the sky, the god Agatha Nicholas appeared and told the noble warriors that although most of them seemed to understand the situation they were in, they came from a completely civilized world, blessed by gods and free from danger. They had not received the baptism of blood and fire and thus could not yet be called full-fledged warriors. So, the first task would be a trial test. They would be randomly assigned into several groups of 10 people and sent to different worlds to fight monsters there. Everyone listened attentively to the god. Brother Wei decided to look at the reaction of his friends. He saw Lin Hao's shocked face as he looked at the god and thought, was he just speechless? He understood everything. He would only be a burden. But Lin Hao wasn't shocked out of fear. He looked at the god and thought, what the hell? The system window reported that this ancient god was friendly towards him. Characteristics: unknown. Advice: it exists too strongly. None of its weaknesses are available to it. But he was lucky. He thought, I think the god is female. The keeper skill also works on her, so she is friendly to me. Lin Hao opened his mouth in shock and thought, does the keeper's skill even work on ancient gods? The corner of his mouth lifted into a wry smile and he thought he was lucky. Agatha Nicholas said that, out of pity for some of them, she, the merciful Agatha Nicholas, would not allow her noble warriors to die in vain. As she spoke, a purple haze began to appear from underground and slowly rose into the air. Agatha Nicholas explained that death in the trial would not be real for them. They would not die, but the pain and all the sensations they experienced would be real. Lin Hao looked fearfully at the haze that approached him. Agatha Nicholas told them to fight. She was looking forward to their triumph. After that, Lin Hao was completely engulfed in the purple haze. Agatha Nicholas added that she was especially looking forward to the performance of some of them. After a while, Lin Hao woke up in a completely different place, lying on the cold ground of a cave. As soon as he opened his eyes, his gaze immediately came across webs that were all around him. All the people from the group had gathered closer to each other. Someone said that they were scared. What kind of place is this? He just hates spiders. Lin Hao sat up. Not seeing Lin Zan among them, he thought, does that mean Lin Zan and her bodyguard were assigned to another group? Then I'll have to figure this out myself. Unnecessary trouble. He rose to his feet and decided to approach the group of people, thinking, the first test is a spider's lair. He scratched the back of his head and wondered, wouldn't they just have to deal with regular spiders? Why were these people so worried? Suddenly, he heard sounds from the side and immediately lowered his gaze, seeing 3 palm-sized spiders running from place to place. Lin Hao smiled nervously and thought, now I understand why they were so afraid. These spiders are quite big. One guy from the group crushed a spider with his foot, leaving a wet mark on the ground. He asked why people were shouting so much and told them to calm down. It's just a few spiders. Humans are the main predators of the planet. We've spent hundreds of thousands of years rising to the top of the food chain. Should we really be afraid of some spiders? If we use our most powerful weapons, intelligence and unity, we won't fear even hundreds of spiders. Lin Hao decided to look at his character panel. Ordinary man relationship, neutral, status healthy, level 0, power 4, constitution 4, agility 2, will 3. Advice, this guy is much stronger than him, but he is not interested in him, so the keeper skill will not work, or will he find a way to interest him? Lin Hao was surprised by his attributes and thought, this guy is the strongest in our group. It's a pity he's not some girl, then the keeper skill would work. Going up to him and asking to enroll as one of the chicks that need looking after is tantamount to suicide. While he was thinking about this, a crunching sound was heard from somewhere underground. A sharpened stone began to rise from the ground, and everyone immediately looked in the direction of the sound and froze in place. With a crackling sound, the stone completely emerged from underground, and Lin Hao thought that this must be the first task. The whole group of people came closer to the stone that had appeared in front of the passage deeper into the cave. They saw inscriptions on it. This is the lair of the mother spider monster. Female spiders tend to become extremely aggressive during the breeding season. Note, this world has been modified, and the IQ of monsters has been specially lowered. Escaping from their line of sight will stop the pursuit. This only works here. It will not work like that in other worlds. Lin Hao read the information on the stone and thought that the environment here was clearly suitable for spiders to live in. He had some doubts. He looked at the dark passage ahead, from which danger emanated, and thought that the deeper they ventured, the larger the monsters they would encounter. Several people crowded together, and one of them asked if they could all go together, and one of them asked if they could all go together. Another man said there were too many people. What if someone fell behind? Lin Hao thought that the optimal solution would be to split into small units. That way, it would be easier for them to protect each other and move around too, but he was too weak, and his pretty appearance wouldn't convince anyone to listen to his idea. He would just have to wait and watch. He remembered the words of Agatha Nicholas and thought that if the ancient god hadn't lied, going ahead together might not be such a bad idea, but someone would still die. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the cave. The people raised their heads to find out where the sound was coming from. The ancient god said that since this was their first task, she would have mercy on them and give them a hint. They needed to enter the cave and do whatever it took to survive. They should try to go as far into the cave as possible. If they lingered near the initial location, the spider would become angry and attack. One of his friends asked Spider Monster, "What the hell?" They froze at the entrance, and someone said they were definitely in trouble. The bravest man was approached by another, who asked what they would do. Go inside or stay. In response, the man said, "How should I know?" He made his decision and told the others they needed to move forward. He waved a homemade axe toward the entrance and said, "These are just spiders. We have weapons. Let's put fear aside and pass this test." He entered the cave, and the others followed him. Lin Hao remained behind everyone. He smiled and thought that he would stay back and keep an eye on everything. He needed to study the situation. Not much time had passed since they entered the long, cold corridor. Lin Hao walked behind everyone while the people in front held their weapons at the ready. One man asked the leader, "Weren't we supposed to be divided into groups of 10? Why are there only 9 of us?" The leader pointed behind him and said, "I thought he wouldn't be of any help, so I let him stay back." Lin Hao, meanwhile, followed the others and looked at something on the wall. The leader continued, "I think that kid is weaker than each of us. He's one of those who stays silent, always waiting for a good moment to take the initiative. And when that moment comes, he dies stupidly. We'll leave him far behind. If the spider comes after us, we'll let it eat him." Lin Hao enthusiastically looked at the web on his fingers, seemingly not hearing them. One man hesitantly told the leader that this didn't feel right. In response, the leader smiled and asked, "You do understand that we're on the threshold of life and death. To survive, we have to use all available means, or do you want to die?" The man replied that he thought the leader's words made sense. Meanwhile, as they walked, a spider was watching them from the ceiling. Lin Hao walked behind a girl trembling with fear and looked up at something on the ceiling. The next second, the spider quickly descended onto the girl. Lin Hao didn't even notice it at first, but as soon as the spider pierced the girl's neck with its leg and blood sprayed, his expression darkened, and he stopped. The girl's blood fell on him. Still not believing what was happening, he looked at his bloody hand. Then he looked up and saw the spider gnawing on the body of the dead girl, accompanied by a sickening sound. Seeing this gruesome sight in front of him, Lin Hao smiled nervously and thought, "They just entered, and already the first blood." Blood began to spread across the floor, and the others finally noticed the death of a group member. They immediately turned toward the spider with their weapons at the ready. Someone asked, "What kind of creature is that? Is that really a spider? It's terrifying." The team leader gritted his teeth as he looked at the corpse and thought that something was definitely wrong. He immediately turned to the others and shouted, "Disperse quickly, run back." Everyone, as if on command, quickly turned around and ran to the initial location. Lin Hao looked after them and thought, why the hell does he think he's a commander? All he did was condemn his people to death. At the same moment, the spider finished its meal and began to slowly approach Lin Hao, its legs knocking against the stone floor. Lin Hao became very nervous and thought, why am I so worried about others? They'll cope just fine without me. The only one in trouble now is me. He picked up the nearest stone from the ground and thought, idiots. I can't go back. I'll have to figure this out myself, but I don't think conventional means of self-defense will be effective here. He didn't think he could come to an agreement with the spider. He raised the stone to strike and thought, then I can only fight for life or death. I will not die. But at the last moment, just before the blow, something made him stop. The spider looked at Lin Hao with a sweet gaze in which there was no trace of hostility. A character panel appeared. This was a young female spider who was friendly toward him. She was healthy. Power 5, Constitution 4, Agility 6, Will 2. Tip: this is a very weak creature, but no matter how weak it is, it can still be defeated. So, is it a female? His keeper skill had come into effect again. He would not die. Lin Hao slowly lowered the stone and thought, with a wry smile, is it even normal for this skill to work on spiders? He should have stopped being surprised after it worked on the ancient god. He turned away from the spider and she continued to look at him with sweet, curious eyes. He thought that the strength of the keeper skill surprised him more and more every time. Shouldn't it be a mystical skill rather than just an epic one? It's just amazing. He turned his nervous gaze back to the spider and thought that the skill seemed to have a strong effect on her. Why did she get so close to me? The spider ran up to his leg and began rubbing her head against his shoe. Lin Hao raised the stone above her again and thought he would finish her off before she became hostile. But seeing a spider near his feet, whose eyes sparkled with friendliness, Lin Hao couldn't bring himself to strike. He gritted his teeth and looked at her again, asking himself, how can a killer spider be so cute? Unable to hit her, Lin Hao threw the stone to the ground and thought, I just can't do this. He headed further down the corridor and the spider followed him. Displeased, crossing his arms over his chest, he thought that he was being too humane. When did I become so soft toward those who are friendly to me? That's not cool. But he didn't do this out of compassion or mercy. It wasn't like that at all. The spider continued to follow him, casting loving glances in his direction. Half an hour later, after some observations, Lin Hao had an idea of the strength of spider monsters. Their agility and strength far surpassed his own. To test this, he threw stones forward and the spider quickly ran after them, trying to catch them. Having reached one stone, she immediately moved to the next. After testing her capabilities, Lin Hao realized they did not go beyond human limits. Judging by the attribute panel, this spider was even slightly inferior to Lin Zhong's bodyguard. At the same time, after comparing himself with the spider monster, he found that the data on the attribute panel was very accurate. For example, his power, agility, and physique were about half as good, and his will was 4 times better than hers. He looked thoughtfully at the spider hovering near his feet and thought that he had decided to abandon any idea of using martial arts. Even with a sneak attack, he still wouldn't be able to defeat her. While thinking this, his gaze met the cute, sparkling eyes of the spider. He thought that this spider monster's attributes were indeed stronger than those of an ordinary person, but even so, she wouldn't be able to kill a person in one blow. So, if a spider monster wanted to kill someone, the victim would likely see the monster coming. He also understood why the ancient god arranged all this in the first place. They were her noble warriors, so their hands must inevitably be covered in blood. He opened the character panel and thought he could easily guess what the attributes of power, agility, and physique were responsible for. But what about will, and why was his will so high? Is it because of the spirit guide talent? Maybe this isn't the full effect of the talent. Is there something else? Some kind of superpower? He pointed his hands toward the female spider, trying to turn her into a pig, but nothing happened. He yawned widely and said he didn't care anymore. Apparently, he was expecting too much. He wandered further into the cave and thought, anyway, I have the keeper skill, so the spider monsters here won't attack me. I can explore this location without fear. He smiled and thought, maybe I'll be lucky and meet someone strong, someone who can kill a spider with one hit. Then I could make friends with them. Time passed. Lin Hao came around the corner and came across corpses lying on the cold ground. He walked past them. 2 spiders were already following him. He thought that he had come so far and only encountered corpses. He hadn't met a single living soul. He counted 8 or 9 members of his crew dead. It's obvious that acting separately is the same as walking into death. Another spider joined him. Lin Hao, having found a hole in the floor that spiders used, climbed in and dropped into the corridor below. As soon as he landed, he saw the corpses of spiders around and thought that even here there were still signs that someone had survived. Severed limbs of spider monsters were scattered everywhere along with corpses. He walked a little further, and around the next turn he saw another corpse. This time it was the group leader. The leader had managed to kill a couple of spiders before his death. Lin Hao looked at his dead body and thought, so that pseudo-leader died after all. With 2 spider monsters clinging to him, he had no chance of survival. Serves him right. While walking through the cave, many spiders fascinated by him had accumulated behind him. Looking back at this growing spider army, he thought, what would I feel if I saw an entire flock of spiders trailing behind me? Nervous at the sight of the spiders hovering around his feet, Lin Hao thought that he didn't need to be afraid. They would still help him no matter what situation he found himself in. How convenient it is, the keeper skill acts on its own. He doesn't need to do anything at all. He walked on and thought that he had been walking for quite some time. Why is this cave so big? Is there really no end? Turning a corner, he stopped abruptly when he saw a completely different view in front of him. He had entered a huge hall where crystals grew, and in the middle, on a pedestal, lay a spider. Her upper body was human, and a scythe lay nearby. Snow-white hair covered part of her sleeping face. Her head and hands rested on the lid of a chest, as if guarding it. Sensing someone's presence in the cave, the mother spider slowly opened her eyes and looked straight at Lin Hao. After that, she got up, took the scythe from the floor, and hitting the cold ground with her paws, took a few steps toward him. The mere sight of her huge weapon was intimidating, but the spider herself looked friendly. Although she did not express any emotions, she gazed at Lin Hao fixedly and didn't take her eyes off him for a second. A character panel appeared, indicating that this was the mother spider, who was friendly toward him. She was healthy. Level 1, Strength, 13 Constitution 9 Agility 16 Wills. Advice, there is nothing to fear. She is very friendly toward him, so friendly in fact that she is ready to go further with him. Lin Hao froze and thought, I think this is the boss of the current level and she's much stronger than me. But the keeper skill was active again, so she didn't attack him. The task given to them by the ancient god only stated that they must penetrate deep into the cave. They weren't ordered to defeat the boss monster, were they? Then he had completed the task. Suddenly, one of the spiders following him pushed Lin Hao forward. He thought, what the hell? The ability is active, so they shouldn't be hostile to me. The spider pushed him several more times, and Lin Hao became very worried, beginning to lose his balance. After that, he fell but was quickly picked up by the other spiders and carried straight to the mother spider. Lin Hao thought that even though their intelligence wasn't high, they had deliberately brought him to her. He imagined himself in a wedding suit next to the spider and thought, do they want me to marry her? He smiled wryly and thought, because I treated them like my sisters, do they want me to be their father? The spiders gently lowered Lin Hao to the ground near the mother spider and then calmly scattered to the sides. The mother spider hid her scythe, dissolving it into the air. After that, she stepped off the pedestal and approached Lin Hao. He became very nervous and said, my name is Lin Hao, but you can just call me Little Mouse. What's your name? The mother spider didn't answer. She put her hand on his cheek, and Lin Hao became even more worried. He grabbed her wrist, moved her palm away from his face, and said her hands were cold, but pleasant to the touch. He thought, did she just touch my face? Maybe we can at least talk. If she joins the dialogue, I'll show her my well-spoken tongue. The mother spider, with a slight blush on her face, put a finger on his lips, signaling him to be quiet. Lin Hao looked at her in surprise. Then she suddenly tore his outer clothes with a sharp movement, which frightened him greatly. He grabbed her hands and pushed her away, asking her to wait. His face turned red, and shaking his head, he shouted that they should do this safely. She didn't need to tear his clothes, he could simply remove them. And manipulating people isn't good either. At that same second, a web flew into his mouth, silencing him. He looked up at the spider in shock. Her face had turned even redder, her breathing quickened, and then more web strands tied his arms and legs to the floor, preventing him from moving. Lin Hao looked at the spider in horror and muttered, trying to say something, but she still didn't answer. Fear overtook him again because he couldn't even move. Time passed. He stared at one point with a blank look, thinking that he had hoped to finally say goodbye to his virginity, something he couldn't get rid of for so long. All his clothes lay on the floor, and now only a web covered his body. He thought that she had stripped him completely just to dress him in spider silk clothes she had made herself. She specifically ruined all my plans. He turned to look at her and saw her weaving something from her web, smiling. The character panel was updated, and the advice now stated, satisfying her most cherished fetish would bring her the greatest happiness. Her friendliness toward him will never diminish. Lin Hao thought, the most cherished fetish of such a hot girl is to dress up a cute boy in handmade clothes? Isn't this too weird? He rose to his feet and with a smile thanked the spider for the gorgeous gift. Should I thank her somehow? Maybe in return, she'll let me clean her room. The spider looked up from what she was doing, lightly touched his face with her hand, and then nodded with a smile. She stepped back, opening the way for him to approach the chest. He pointed at the chest and said, I've heard that if you don't take the items out, if items are left in the chest for too long to dry, they easily become moldy and unusable. It's hard for her to keep this place clean and comfortable, so why shouldn't he help her? She didn't answer, and he, in anticipation, reached out to the chest with his hands, thinking that this chest was the only valuable thing here. He hoped the things inside would not disappoint him. As soon as he touched the chest, the voice of an ancient deity echoed through the cave. Agatha Nicholas said, who would have thought someone could actually manage to get the main reward without killing monsters? Lin Hao immediately raised his head when he heard the voice and then looked at the spider to check her reaction. She noticed his gaze and showed him the knitted t-shirt, but by that time Lin Hao had already turned away and was looking in a completely different direction. He looked at the little spiders sleeping peacefully in a pile at the entrance to the hall and thought, they didn't react at all. Does that mean only I can hear the voice of the ancient god? He was delighted and asked, I did great at this level, right? I achieved this only thanks to the sensitive guidance of the ancient god. Since I completed the task flawlessly, shouldn't I receive some additional rewards? Agatha Nicholas congratulated him on receiving the best award, one which theoretically no one could obtain. Lin Hao was surprised and asked, is this true? Without waiting for an answer, he smiled and thought, that means she's definitely talking about me. He decided to open the chest that had caught his eye in this otherwise empty cave. As soon as he lifted the lid, a bright glow began to emanate from within. The lid opened completely, and Lin Hao covered his face with his hands to protect his eyes from the bright flash. He thought, what is this? Is it possible that if the contents of a chest glow golden, it means there's some legendary equipment inside? He opened his eyes slightly to check his guess and was very surprised to see a book with golden edges floating in the air above the chest. He thought, is it just a book? Agatha Nicholas explained that this was an epic book of props. To receive detailed information about the book, he had to touch it and use his mind to activate it. Lin Hao reached for the book with a smile and thought that although receiving an additional reward wasn't part of his plan, he now realized something. If he followed the rules, the ancient gods would not object and might even give him additional benefits. As soon as his hand approached the book, it began to glow golden. The moment his fingertips touched it, a spark flashed at the point of contact. Immediately afterward, the knowledge from the book began to transfer into Lin Hao's mind. He closed his eyes and began to absorb it. While doing so, he thought that this book of props for transfer allowed him to learn all the professional skills recorded in it. It's like learning skills in an online game, he mused. However, for now, he could only select one monster tamer. As the name suggests, it enables the user to make contracts with monsters. The contracting ceremony is not very complicated, but the user's mental strength, will attribute, must be higher than the opponent's, and the opponent's mind must not resist. Only then can the contract succeed. He wasn't interested in the origin of the profession or the book. He simply left the choice to fate. The idea of transferring reference information of skills directly into the mind and body was of course good, but at the moment somewhat useless. The spider was still standing nearby holding the clothes she had made. Lin Hao finished absorbing the knowledge and thought that he could now subdue only one monster, and not because of the tamer's profession, but rather thanks to his keeper skill. If he wanted more minions, he needed to grow stronger in this area. However, the book didn't describe how exactly to improve. He understood that during battles he needed to summon his contracted monsters, and they would carry out his orders. Their coordination would rely on the will attribute. He imagined himself giving the command to attack and thought, are these like Pokemon? He smiled and thought, if I get a lot of these, will it be like a group attack strategy? That's vile but perfect for me. While the handsome hero holds a heavy sword and fights up front, I'd prefer to stand behind and watch while my monsters crush the enemy and tear their organs apart. Suddenly, the book lit up again, and a system window began to form from glowing pixels. The system asked if he accepted the profession. He could choose to agree or refuse. Lin Hao reached out toward the accept button and thought, from now on Lin Hao will no longer be a mere mortal. He pressed the button, streams of energy swirled around him, and a magic circle appeared beneath his feet. He smiled and thought, now I am a mortal who commands terrifying monsters. A black mark appeared on the back of his hand, glowing brightly. It now symbolized who he was. He looked at the mark and thought, I've been through this before. Acquiring a profession is engraved into one's mind. Just like with the introduction of skills, his lips began to form a smile as he felt that feeling again. Everything was based on the strength of his mind. He could already roughly judge in advance the difficulty of concluding a contract with the monster standing in front of him. He looked at the spiders that had led him to the mother spider's lair. Above their heads, the complexity of forming a contract was displayed. Lin Hao saw that it was easy to make a contract with them and thought that the will of these little spiders was much weaker than his. He scratched his head and thought that maybe they were impressed by his charm. But even so, the simplicity of the contract process with them seemed reasonable. The mother spider quietly approached him while he was observing the others. Suddenly he turned, and his gaze immediately landed on her large breasts, which were now very close to him. He was a little taken aback and with an awkward smile asked if she wanted something from him. She silently patted her chest as if pointing to herself, and Lin Hao thought that he had no idea what she was trying to communicate. Suddenly he was surprised when he noticed that the complexity of concluding a contract above her head was marked as simple. He thought, isn't she the boss of this level? Why is it so easy to sign a contract with her? Her mental strength and will reached 6 points, only 2 points less than his. That meant that at this moment, she was nearly as strong as he was. Concluding a contract with her should have been much more difficult than with the little spiders, whose will was only 2 points. He looked at his character panel and then at the mother spider to compare their attributes. After doing so, he realized that her level and the total number of her attributes added up to be much stronger than his. Maybe it's because of my keeper skill, he thought, grinning. In that case, if he wanted to make contracts with monsters, he should choose ones whose will was weaker than his but whose overall strength was greater. This spider was a perfect match. He folded his hands in prayer and turned to the ancient god with a question. Since he had already received the profession of monster tamer, could he form a contract with the spider sister and take her with him? Agatha Nicholas was a little surprised by the question and did not answer. Lin Hao then turned his gaze to the mother spider and said that he just thought it was a little sad that his little sister would have to stay in this dark place guarding the level all alone. She understands, right? He asked. Tears appeared in his eyes as he said he knew what it was like to be alone. Since childhood, he had grown up alone, eaten alone, and even after surgery, no one came to see him. No care, no love, and no desire for life. Out of emotion, he began to fidget with his fingers and told the ancient god that he wasn't saying loneliness was terrible, just that he had grown used to it over his entire life. Agatha Nicholas felt sympathy for him and said that his desire did not violate any rules. Lin Hao immediately looked upward, his eyes burning with joy. Is that true? He asked. He raised his hands above his head in the shape of a heart and told the ancient god that he adored her. Then, placing his 2 index fingers together, he activated his tag. A magic circle appeared beneath his feet. Turning his gaze to the mother spider, he said, then let's begin the contract. He thought that since this level could easily create a copy of her if lost, he should not miss the opportunity to take her with him. After all, he didn't know what awaited them at the next level. What if the next boss isn't a girl but a man? What would I do then? He extended his hand to the spider and with a smile told her not to worry. From that day on, she would no longer be lonely. While doing this, he thought that in the future they would fight together. Thanks to him, she would gain experience, level up, and a bright future awaited them. The mother spider responded by also extending her hand. Their fingertips touched, and a contract was formed. Energy began to emanate from their hands. Lin Hao was thrilled that it had worked. Immediately after that, the spider began to dissolve into the air and float around the cave as a glowing haze. Lin Hao became a little nervous as he watched the haze move around him. After a few seconds, the spider flew into his shadow and merged with it. He looked at his shadow in surprise and thought, after forming the contract, her half-human body transformed into a fully human form. That's quite convenient. He wondered if it would be the same with future contracts. As soon as the contract was completed, Agatha Nicholas stated that the level boss would disappear within a minute, the task would end, and everyone would return to the original area. Hearing this, Lin Hao thought, did I end the task early by making a contract with the level boss? Perhaps the goal of this level was only to explore the cave's depths, not to defeat the boss. Maybe that's why the task ended early. He crossed his arms over his chest with displeasure and muttered that he didn't even want to leave. He felt like he had left something valuable behind, but the spider sister's strength had now reached 13 points, twice his own. As strong as that fighter who knows Muay Thai, and her agility is generally 3 times higher. At least he had the feeling that at the first level he coped with the task better than others. While he was thinking about this, the shadow of a small spider grew on his shadow's shoulder and began to move. Lin Hao looked down at his shadow and thought that he could sense its emotions, but his feelings were beyond her control. Is this a one-sided defense of the profession? He wondered. The ancient god said that the task was completed, and teleportation would begin immediately. A small whirlpool appeared above Lin Hao's head, enveloping him in purple light. At the same time, a similar whirlpool with a purple stream appeared above the cut-off piece of the city. Agatha Nicholas announced that the mission was over. All the people found themselves once again in the cut-off piece of the city. The ancient god said that the reward for completing the level would be distributed to their personal terminals in the form of points. To trigger this, they simply had to silently say the name of the ancient god Agatha Nicholas in their minds. A blue screen would then appear in front of them. Everyone immediately followed the instructions, and system windows appeared before them. The ancient god explained that this was a personal terminal that recorded their information and was visible only to them. With it, they could check their main attributes, point status, and task rating. One of the men in the crowd opened his personal terminal and told his friend Lai that he had accumulated 10 points. He encouraged him to check his own terminal. Lai opened his own and laughed with satisfaction, saying he had as many as 11 points. His friend said that was cool, but admitted he didn't understand what the points were used for. Lai replied that they would need them in the future. Lin Hao looked around to see other people's personal terminals but saw nothing. He recalled that the ancient god had said they could only see their own panel. Agatha Nicholas then said that the great ancient god was graciously giving them 1 hour to form teams in order to have a better chance of surviving the next test. Lin Hao looked to the side thoughtfully, wondering whether he should form a team. For now, he decided not to think about it. First, he needed to look at his own characteristics. He mentally said the name Agatha Nicholas, and his personal terminal appeared in front of him. It displayed his attributes under the new profession, Monster Tamer. He looked at the blue panel in front of him and thought, does this panel resemble the interface of my life game skill? Why does the ancient god do this? Shouldn't he respect the intellectual property rights of others? Suddenly, Lin Zan's voice came from behind, calling him a mouse and saying she had finally found him. Lin Hao immediately turned around. As soon as he saw her running toward him, he smiled widely and exclaimed, "Sister, you..." She ran up to him, grabbed his hand, and looked into his eyes, asking worriedly whether he had completed the task. "Everything was fine, right? Was it dangerous? I hope you didn't get hurt," she said. Lin Hao smiled awkwardly and was about to answer, but suddenly, a displeased laugh echoed in his head. It was the spider girl. Lin Hao was surprised. Is that the voice of the spider sister? Is she angry? Could it be that after merging into his shadow, she could still perceive the real world? Then, if I'm with other girls, will I lose her favor? Will she break the contract? he wondered. If the girls start fighting over me, the consequences could be dire. But if I avoid relationships with team members, then I might not see any progress. Lin Hao pulled his hand away from Lin Zan and asked if she had forgotten that the ancient god said the first task was designed so that no one would truly die. He thought that if there was no real danger, then it was better not to anger the spider. Lin Zan awkwardly lowered her gaze and apologized, saying that her emotions were just confusing her thoughts. Lin Hao smiled, scratched the back of his head, and admitted that the world he was transported to had really scared him. If he hadn't remembered every second that his sister needed him, that she needed his help, perhaps he would have died in the beginning. Having said all this, he thought that Lin Zan had many good friends and connections. She was strong and friendly to him. He couldn't just give up on her. Lin Zan was overjoyed and decided to change the topic. She asked how many points he had received for the task. She had earned 40 points. Lin Hao opened his personal terminal and replied that he hadn't checked yet. Then he went to the points section, and the system displayed the scores of all team members who had been in the world of the mother spider's lair. He saw that he had 0 points. He exclaimed indignantly in his thoughts, "What the hell? I completed the task without killing anyone. Even so, I received 0 points. Does this mean only by killing enemies can we receive points?" But the god said, "I did the best job. These game mechanics are completely unbalanced, and this interface even shows player rankings. All the rules promote competition, but it's pointless." The reality was so complex. Did the ancient god seem to be a black-hearted capitalist? Without taking his eyes off the terminal, Lin Hao upsetly told Lin Zan that he saw he had 0 points, yet he took 3,500 first place. Lin Zan also opened the terminal and told him not to be upset. Although he had 0 points, he was at least average among everyone. But if he ranked below 3,000, it meant the ancient god had not yet recognized his efforts in the created world. Lin Hao replied with a rare smile that he hoped so. In the terminal, he scrolled through the rankings and saw Lin Zan was in 14th place. He thought that she had climbed quite high. He scrolled further through the rating table and saw a familiar name. YC took 10th place in the ranking with 1110 points. Lin Hao was very surprised to see his ranking and said, "Brother Ye took 10th place." Lin Zan was also surprised by this and then became slightly upset. She lowered her gaze and started to say something about her guard, but decided not to continue and told him to forget about it. They wouldn't talk about it. Lin Hao looked at her and thought, does she not want to talk about Ye Si taking 10th place? Lin Zan raised her hand to her chest and suddenly said that she had a conversation with him. She said that Brother Ye not only scored so many points for the task, but also led many subordinates. In such a strange world, they needed to stay in a group to survive. She wanted to invite Lin Hao to join them because Brother Ye's a Muay Thai master. He would be much safer with them. Without waiting for his answer, she grabbed his hand and dragged him along, saying, "Let him go with me. I promise that nothing bad will happen to him." Lin Hao frowned and thought that he was looking at Yasi's characteristics. Why are YC's attributes not that much higher than hers? So why did he score so many points? Lin Zan said that YC had lured many subordinates to his side. Does that mean he used some strange methods? Lin Hao looked at the back of her head as she led him along and thought it was so troublesome. Apparently, it would be difficult for her to defend herself, since she was friendly toward him from the very beginning. Then if something happened, he would not stand aside and would help her. So be it. He would follow her. A few minutes later, they came to an alley where Yi Si had gathered with his subordinates. They stood in a semicircle, discussing something and sometimes smiling. Lin Zan approached them from behind, along with Lin Hao. Yi Si turned around and heard the sounds of footsteps. Lin Zan stopped a few meters away and looked at him silently. YC called her miss, but suddenly stopped and said this would be the last time he would call her that. He understood that in the current situation, all the statuses and positions of the past no longer had any meaning. Lin Zan felt something was wrong and pursed her lips, looking wearily at her former bodyguard. YZ said that the guy next to him was a former lawyer, seemingly a quiet, law-loving guy, but this guy was as angry as a mad dog. He was a good fighter. His gaze became menacing as he said that in this world they could only rely on strength. Lin Zan lowered her head, hiding her eyes under the shadow of her cap, and firmly said the name YC. Then she pointed her finger at him and exclaimed that she had understood everything. In this world, he was a disgusting person. To get more points for himself, he drove away old men and women, tried to seduce the girls he liked, and when that didn't work, he simply took them by force and then killed them. She said it would be easier that way and still accepted his disgusting approach. Her gaze became angry and she clenched her hands into fists, asking, "What is he planning to do now?" YC extended his hand toward his supporters and said that, of course, he would gather strong people around him and continue to use force to get more and more. The guys behind him smiled and he said they were ready to follow him faithfully. He extended his hand to Lin Zan awkwardly, said her name, and asked her to be his woman. This made Lin Zan and Lin Hao taken aback and very nervous. YC smiled widely and said that together they would become the most powerful subordinates of the ancient gods. They would rely on them, and the abilities they would receive from them would give them an advantage and make them kings of this world. They would make them the best, he said. She understands. After a short pause, Lin Zan said that she didn't expect him to become such an idiot. Is it really like this with all men? As soon as the law ceases to restrain them, they throw off their shackles and become brutes. She looked up at him with a furious look and said that they had all grown up in a civilized society, so why in the past few hours had he completely accepted barbarian principles in the law of the jungle? Lin Hao took her hand, which she was clenching so nervously, into a fist. She immediately looked at him in surprise, feeling the touch. Lin Hao scratched his head with a smile and told her not to look at these people. They were bad. He promised her that he wouldn't become like them. He thought that this YC really was an idiot. Just the thought that Lin Zan would become his girlfriend made him drool all over the place. He didn't know how well he hit it before, but Lin Zan trusted him too much. He thought she believed the others no less. Hearing these words from Lin Hao, Lin Zan smiled slightly, and tears of gratitude appeared in her eyes. Yesi finally paid attention to him and asked his name. "It's Lin Hao," he replied. "Right now I will look at what he has achieved," Yesi said. He opened his personal terminal, looked at the rating, then looked up at him mockingly and asked, "Does he have 0? He hid his personal terminal and said that he was just a worthless piece of trash. With such a cute face, he could only hope to please a strong girl. In the civilized world, he survived, that's true, but here, he was a weakling. He was just meat for the strong. He had no chance of survival." Lin Hao listened to these words with his brows furrowed and did not respond. Lin Zan got angry because of this and told Yaozi that he talks too much. He replied that this was not true at all, he just tells it like it is, but she was strong. If she explained herself to him, they would take the best for themselves. It was just that she was too soft-hearted. If they took this worthless scum with them, it would drag them down and slow the speed of achieving their goals. Lin Zan put her hand on Lin Hao's shoulder, turning him around, and displeased, told Yaisi that this had nothing to do with him. He had found himself some good companions. Right then, this was where their paths diverged. She took Lin Hao's hand and led him back, bidding farewell to Yaisi. He called out to her and asked her to wait. She heard this, turned around slightly, and began to wait for what he would say. Yaisi took a few steps toward her and said that she had good goods and that he had always liked her very much. He approached her and with a threatening smile asked if she thought he would just let her go. Lin Zan turned her whole body toward him and confidently put her fist to her chest. Defiantly, she asked what he wanted to do. This was the main city of the ancient gods. He not only did not have the right but also the opportunity to kill anyone. In response, he asked if she knew that his strength was magnificent. He had single-handedly managed to get into the top 10 and recruited some good people into his team. He was the best among 5,000 players. He said she should join him. By cooperating with him, she would climb to the top. Lin Zan exclaimed that he should only dream about it. He said such sweet words to her, but in reality, as soon as he got tired of playing with her, he would lose interest and get rid of her like an overgrown kitten. She raised her voice and exclaimed that she would never join him. YC replied with a smile that he didn't care. The main city of the ancient gods, even if he couldn't kill anyone, he didn't care. He could do whatever his heart desired with her here. Someday, she would find herself in a hopeless situation and crawl to him on her knees. Then she would be ready to carry out any of his orders. Isn't he right? She clenched her teeth in anger, shocked by his words, and said that he was shameless. Immediately after that, she turned around abruptly, grabbing Lin Hao's hand and said that they needed to leave. This man was crazy. They needed to go outside where he wouldn't lay a finger on them. YC lowered his head slightly, looking at her from under his brows, and said with a smile that he had said he wouldn't let her just leave. He abruptly took off running after them. As he ran, he pushed off the ground and jumped high above them, raising his right leg to kick Lin Hao. Lin Zan noticed this, and Yaisi shouted that if they did not hold on to each other, then none of them would run away. One must stay here. Immediately after that, Lin Hao and Lin Zan released their hands and both recoiled to the sides right at the moment when Yaisi landed and kicked the floor. Lin Zan was very worried and thought that if she tried to escape alone, she might succeed, but she couldn't leave the little mouse here. Noticing that Lin Zan was hesitating, Yixi smiled and said that her kind heart would ruin her. He turned his gaze to Lin Hao and said that in such a situation, she thinks about this trash more than about herself. Now he would make it clear to her that in the current world it was useless to be soft-hearted. After these words, he pointed his finger at Lin Hao and told his friends that they should kill this brat. One of his guys doubted and said that they were in the main city, and if they killed someone, there must be some consequences. Yersi turned an angry look at him and asked, "What are the consequences?" The ancient gods did not say a word that it was forbidden to kill other people in the main city. Besides, he has 0 points. The ancient gods will not defend this worthless brat. The guys began to surround Lin Hao. He fearfully raised his hands to his chest, making an innocent look, and asked if they were really going to beat him. A child. He faked a sob and said it was too cruel. He thought they were in the main city, and even though he didn't know whether there would be any punishment, maybe he should call the Spider Girl and order her to kill everyone. The guy with long hair laughed and flexed his fists. He said that Lin Hao was just useless trash and deserved only death. Doesn't he think so? Another guy who doubted Yixi's decision apologized and said that the boss gave the order and nothing personal. Another guy with a mohawk laughed and said that Lin Hao was a useless piece of trash and that his dying cries would be a delight to his ears. Hearing these words from them, Lin Zan became very worried and called out to the little mouse in fear. She was about to go to his aid, but Yasi put his hand on her shoulder and told her not to think about him. He said to let her watch carefully how they would mock him. Then she would understand that the world had completely changed. Lin Zan tried to break free from his grip, while Lin Hao stood still and thought about what to do. He thought that he did not care that there might be a punishment for murder. He couldn't just let them kill him. Could he let the gods punish him? Then at least they would die together. His lips broke into a wide smile as he raised 2 fingers to